Welcome to Jeremiah's Porch Talks. This is where we take a few minutes, talk about leadership and life, right from my front porch here in Sykesville, Maryland. Rain or shine, this is a time for us to reflect, reset, and get ready for whatever comes next in our respective journeys. I'm Jeremiah. Thanks for joining me. Some words come easy, but not the word reconciliation. It's not a bumper sticker word. It doesn't trend on social media, and it sure doesn't come cheap. Reconciliation is that long, often lonely walk back toward the person that we hurt, the truth we denied, or the beauty we lost when something in us broke. Today I want to talk about reconciliation through three different lenses. The Navajo way of finding beauty, the 9th step of the big book from Alcoholics Anonymous on making amends, and the long, painful journey toward healing in Ireland between the Catholics and the Protestants. But before we walk through those traditions, let me tell you about a story of a moment that first showed up and just showed me how sacred and how beautiful reconciliation really can be. I was 17 years old when I found myself in a revival-style meeting known as the Toronto Blessing. It was a movement that stirred deep emotion in people, whether that be through prayer or weeping, falling to their knees in joy and confession, and for some, even some skepticism. One evening, there was a call for reconciliation between people that were connected to the Holocaust, descendants of the oppressed and the oppressors. I stood there stunned as people from both sides embraced, sobbing, trembling, clinging to one another in raw humanity. There were no speeches, there was no politics, just the sacred work of one person reaching out to another. That night settled something deep in my soul. Healing is possible, even from the unthinkable. And maybe, just maybe, we are capable of more grace than we give ourselves credit for. That understanding of reconciliation, of making the impossible possible, is something the Navajo people have known for a long time. They have a sacred principle of finding beauty, and it's far more than appearances. It means living in harmony with yourself, with your community, the earth, and the spiritual world. But life throws us off balance. We get hurt. We hurt others. Illness, fear, injustice, or even our own pride breaks that harmony. When that happens, the Navajo don't seek punishment. They seek restoration through song, prayer, storytelling, and ceremony. And they guide people back into finding beauty, back into the right relationship with all things. Reconciliation in their view is not just it's not just interpersonal, it's cosmic. It's a return to sacred alignment. It's not about moving on, it's about moving back into harmony with intention and reverence. Now let's turn to the sacred chants of the Navajo, to the practical soul-searching work of the Step 9 in the Alcoholics Anonymous that says that we make direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure others or themselves. This step isn't about saying a quick sorry. It's about owning your past and doing the work to make things right. If you stole, you repay. If you lied, you tell the truth. If you broke trust, you earn it back, one honest action at a time. And here's the hard truth. Not everyone is ready to forgive. So step 9 doesn't promise reconciliation. It promises integrity. You do your part. You clean your side of the street. And just like the Navajo tradition, this isn't about an interpersonal repair. It's about a spiritual restoration. You begin to live in alignment again. You reclaim the dignity you thought you'd lost. Not long after this experience in Toronto, I traveled to Ireland in January of 1999, just months after the Good Friday Agreement was signed. It was a time of hope on paper, but the wounds were still raw. I remember visiting a Catholic family near the Garvahi Road, and they told me about the annual March of the Orange Order. This was a celebration of Oliver Cromwell's victory, seen by many as a deliberate humiliation of their community. Later that same day, I met with a Protestant pastor, not far from there. He had 2 bodyguards with him, ready to protect him from the Catholics, should any cross his path. In a matter of hours, I stood in the homes of both sides of the conflict. I had heard their stories. I had felt their pain. And I realized just how deep the division ran. What struck me wasn't the politics. It was the absence of empathy. 2 groups of people, often living just blocks apart from each other, completely alien to one another's suffering. Yet, in the decades since, there has been progress. Community dialogue groups emerged. Former enemies sat across from one another and told their truths. New generations have grown up in a version of peace that their parents never knew. Is it perfect? Of course not. But something sacred began when people said, we must find a new way forward, even if we never fully agree on the past. So what do the Navajo, the Big Book, and post-conflict Ireland have in common? They all tell us that reconciliation begins with truth. You don't hide from what happened, you face it. Reconciliation requires humility. You own your mistakes without defense. Reconciliation demands patience. The timeline is not yours to control. And reconciliation takes courage. You risk being rejected in order to show up with integrity and do your part to clean your side of the street. And reconciliation thrives on hope. Not blind optimism, but the deep belief that something better can be built. You can't tweet your way to reconciliation. You don't fix it with a press release. You build it like you'd rebuild a burned down house. Slowly. Honestly, 1 brick at a time. And sometimes the person you want to reconcile with isn't ready or isn't around. But even then, the act of trying, the prayer, the letter, the honest conversation with yourself begins the healing process. So here's our challenge. Who are you out of harmony with? A family member? A friend you haven't spoken to in a long time? An entire group of people you've closed your heart to? What if reconciliation doesn't start with them, but it starts with you? The Navajo say, we can always return to beauty. The Big Book says, we can make amends even when it's hard. And the people of Ireland remind us that even the bloodiest divisions can soften with time, with truth, and with grace. I'll never forget that moment in Toronto when descendants of Holocaust victims and perpetrators of those heinous things that occurred stood in one another's arms and wept. And I'll never forget walking the streets of Ireland and seeing with my own eyes what division looks like up close. But I've also seen what healing looks like. And I believe now more than ever, reconciliation is possible. It is hard, it is holy, and it begins with each of us. Let us commit to walk together one step, one truth, one act of courage at a time. I'll leave you with this. My mom is currently finishing her manuscript to a book that she's been working on for the past few years. It is a book about staying and learning to thrive in the midst of chaos and pain. One of the things she says is, the past is part of us, but it doesn't get to be in control. We can all heal. we can all change this story. Her words are written from a deep place of understanding, and they are an emblem, a living proof that reconciliation is possible if we choose it to be. That's it for today. Thanks for spending a few minutes with me on Jeremiah's Porch Talks. Rain or shine, I'll see you next time. And always remember to keep the most important things.